landscape looking good year round as much as possible. So that's how I arrived at a lot of these. And in the process, I fried a lot of plants. So, okay, so can we move to the next slide, Jerry? I'm not seeing the slide screen. So I'm having.
Are you seeing it now?
No, I'm seeing. I'll look at high participants and see if that helps.
Diana, do you see the screen? If you see it, can you raise your hand? Yep, she's seeing it.
Okay.
So I think it might just be on your end.
It's at the bottom. There we go. Okay, sorry. See, I don't know how to drive this thing. It's like being in a new car. Sort of the one of the important principles of designing a landscape bed is to include some tall plants, and those would usually be at the back of the bed so that they don't completely obscure the shorter ones. So some tall flowering shrubs, usually at the back of a bed. And you can choose your foliage by how dense, or choose the plants by how dense their foliage is, to create more or less shade, or to create a more open look. The plants that I have chosen for this are superstar. They happen to be superstar plants because they're recommended by the Cooperative Extension Service, and they perform very well. So if we can move on and take a look at Esperanza.
Okay, it should be up.
Yeah, thank you. These photographs both were provided by or taken from the Texas Superstars website. I tried to get the best quality photos that I could so you could get an idea of what the flowers look like and what the whole plant looks like. But you've probably all seen this. You know, it can get quite tall, or you can keep it trimmed so it grows a little shorter. But it's a wonderful bloomer. It does freeze in the winter, but it comes back. Mine has come back every year, and it's the color is wonderful. Hummingbirds love it. Pollinators really enjoy it. It's a really high-performing flowering shrub for our area. Next slide, Jerry. Firebush. I've only grown this once. It's not a personal favorite of mine, but I know it's very showy, and it does bloom all summer. We had some growing in front of the Guadalupe County Courthouse before they did the landscape renovation, and it got to be quite large. I believe the Superstar description says 3 feet by 3 feet, but I think they were at least 5 feet tall when they were growing in front of the extension office. So that's something to keep in mind. It's another really good hummingbird plant. Everybody loves to have hummingbirds in their yard. So it's highly recommended. And the foliage on this one is more dense. The yellow bells or Esperanza tends to be a little bit looser, but this is more dense. It looks more like a formal shrub, if that's the look that you prefer. Next slide, Jerry. Pride of Barbados. It's a gorgeous thing. That yellow and orange, also very attractive to hummingbirds and other pollinators. The foliage is airy and open, kind of fern-like. The flowers are fabulous. It makes a lot of seed, so you can collect seed and start more plants if you like, if you like to do that. And there is another more tender Caesalpinia that my good friend Betty Hughes introduced me to. It's grown more in South Texas, down along the coast and down all the way into the valley. It's in the same genus, Caesalpinia, but the species name is Mexicana. The common name for it is poinciana, and it has yellow flowers that have a very long, silky-looking red stamens, probably 20 stamens to each flower, and it has that same light, airy, ferny foliage, something like something similar to a oh, I'm sorry, I'm blanking out. That pink puffball tree that we used to have, probably all of us had
Mimosa.
in our mimosa. Yes, foliage is very much like mimosa. Okay, next slide, please. Lower growing plants, knee-high plants and ground cover that will give you a lot of bright color and interest during our really hot summers. Pentas, lantana, and globe amaranth, and these are all also Texas superstars. Next slide, Jerry. The lantana new gold is really kind of a personal favorite of mine. I took this photo about 2 days ago in my yard. I really like it because I like that bright yellow. But I also like the foliage. The foliage, if you crush it, it has a little bit of a lemon scent. So I've even cut it and brought it in the house for cut flowers. It does freeze. It will sometimes get spider mites if it's a particularly hot, dry summer. But I think if you do have that problem with it, if you will just hose it off periodically with the spray, that will help. If it doesn't, you might even try cutting it all the way back and see if it comes back without the spider mites. They're awfully hard to get rid of. The plant that I have now is doing great, and it's facing west, and it gets sun except for just a couple of hours in the morning when it's shaded by the garage. It gets sun all day. Very bright, showy color. Next slide. Pentas. I really like these. I used to buy the white pentas for my backyard because they got a little bit of sun late morning, midday. That was adequate to keep them blooming, and the white showed up beautifully in the shade. These come in all colors, but this particular selection is on the Texas Superstars list. So I know it's a vigorous bloomer. Next slide. Gomphrena. I've grown this a lot. I've grown. I haven't planted it since I moved to the new house, but I've grown the common purple. I've grown that lighter pink color, and then there's another selection called Strawberry Fields that's kind of a dark orangey red, and it's really pretty. It makes a nice dried flower. It looks great in potpourri, and it doesn't mind the heat at all. If you have trouble finding this in the nurseries, it's quite easy to grow from seed. And I know you can get that, can probably still get that Strawberry Fields selection from Park Seeds. I haven't seen it in any other seed books, but I know Parks used to carry it. Okay, these are the plants coming up now are other plants that I have grown. I'm still growing. Most of them are in my landscape, and a lot of these photos are from my landscape. A lot of them are natives. I tend to try to grow natives as much as I can, and they're pretty much readily available around here. So let's take a look at what we've got next. Is oh boy, Greg's mist flower. Now there are several different mist flowers that are this flower color, but the foliage is different. And I think the distinction between them is mostly how much water they require. This particular one that we're looking at here is the photo on the right is from my yard. It's growing in my yard, and it is covered with queen butterflies almost all day long. I have been told in some of my monarch monitoring training that the male queen butterfly requires a chemical that they get from the nectar of this plant to reproduce. So I think it's the vitamin V of of landscape plants. It has a really pretty light lime green foliage. It grows in a mass, and it spreads from the roots, from the rhizomes. So it makes a really nice ground cover, and you have the added color bonus of all those orange butterflies fluttering around it. Next slide, please. Rock rose. This is in my yard, and both of these photographs are from my yard. This multiplies quite freely, which is not a problem for me because I dig them out and put several in the Native Plant Society Earth Day plant sale every year. But the color, that clear pink color, is so pretty against the green foliage, and it just makes a nice foil for the shrubbery that might be behind it, or for other plant colors. It can get fairly tall. Probably 3.5 feet is about as tall as it will get. And pretty dense, and then if you let it multiply, you can just fill a whole bed with it. It will freeze back a little bit in the winter, but it's generally pretty tough. And there aren't any particular pollinators that I've noticed on the rock rose. It is visited, but not heavily by butterflies. Oh, Pam's pink. This was a really great discovery for me. Oh, someone needs to mute their mic. Okay, Pam's Pink. It's a hybrid, and I haven't been able to determine what the parentage is, but I think that it might be a cross between the coral honeysuckle and the native white honeysuckle. The coral honeysuckle is not fragrant, and this one is. It especially fragrant at night, and it smells like. It doesn't smell like Japanese honeysuckle. It smells more spicy. It's a sweet, spicy scent. It almost is a little like cloves, but very sweet. And the sphinx moths just flock to it at night, in the evening. As soon as the sun is down, I can walk out and see them fluttering all around it. I have this planted on a trellis that hides my 3,000 gallon rainwater harvesting cistern, which is a big old thing, a big black thing. And the trellis is circular. It wraps all the way around, and I have two of these growing on the side closest to my parking pad, and one of them has grown up tall enough that it almost completely blocks the cistern. It's semi-evergreen. It does not twine like coral honeysuckle does. It's more more of a leaner. It needs some support, but it doesn't require a trellis. If you wanted to keep it more like a shrub, you would probably just want to just trim it from the top to make it a little denser. It blooms very heavily in the spring, smells like heaven, and then it just kind of makes it holds on to its blue-green foliage through the summer, and then has a second lighter bloom in the fall. Very fragrant. I don't know how easy it is to find, but because it's a named variety, and it was something that was introduced by Greg Grant, I'm sure you can find it at some of the native plant nurseries. I haven't seen it anywhere here in Seguin, though. Go ahead, Jerry. Here's the coral honeysuckle. One of my favorites, another one of my favorites. I also have some of that growing on my trellis around the cistern. It blooms all summer, but not as heavily as the Pam's Pink does. Hummingbirds are always on it. Bees and other pollinators are always on it. But it really can get big and heavy. I planted some on an arbor in my dog's pen, and it's gotten so big and heavy that part of the arbor is beginning to sag. So we're going to have to put some supports under it to hold up the weight of the vine. But it's evergreen, and it literally blooms year round. I have seen it burned back by a freeze once, but just in general, it's a great plant to have food for pollinators year round, and it's a great plant for hiding something that you know, like an unpleasant view, or something like my black rainwater harvesting cistern that I don't want my visitors to be the first thing to see when they drive up to my house. Next slide, Jerry. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you. You're good.
Okay. Okay. Okay.
Are you seeing it?
Cross. Yeah, yeah. There, my screen's kind of weird right now, but I'm with you. Crossvine. I don't know how many of you are familiar with this, but a lot of people think that it's trumpet vine, and it's not. They're not. I don't even think they're related. The foliage is completely different. The flowers that look similar, but if you put them side by side, they're a lot different. The color is it's subtle. It's a beautiful kind of a dusty, peachy pink color. It blooms. This was taken in my backyard just a couple of months ago. It blooms very, very heavily in the spring. It will cover a fence that you want to hide. It'll cover a view that you want to hide. They have some growing on a tower at the Lady Bird Johnson Wildflower Center that is probably 40 feet tall. And when I was there one year in the spring, that I think it was made from rebar tower was completely covered with the flowers. The foliage is pretty. It's shiny green leaves. If you'll advance the slide, you'll see a little bit of go to the next slide, you'll see a good shot of the foliage also. It does have some fall color. Some of the leaves will turn a little bit maroon, and it keeps its leaves year round. So if you're trying to hide something, then or block a view, then it will be there for you, just like the coral honeysuckle will. All the pollinators love it. The usual suspects: hummingbirds, butterflies, bees. They're all on it. They all really enjoy it. Okay, next slide. Thanks. Okay. Jerry was asking me about this yesterday. This is another thing that's not real easy to find, but Marilyn might remember this. Many years back, we had a herb specialist who would visit from San Antonio and talk to us about growing herbs in the landscape. And he told us at the time that Spanish lavender is the only lavender that you can grow reliably in our climate. And as I recall, he told us that it has to do with our humidity. So he recommended it, but he recommended that we grow it in containers because it doesn't like clay soil, and if you're on black land, you have a lot of clay. So for a long time, I couldn't find it, and I happened to go to an herb sale in San Antonio a few years back, and I bought one plant. It was about the time I was getting ready to move into my house and into this house, and I brought that in a pot and planted it. And then I happened to go to Home Depot one day and of course took my usual stroll through the nursery department, and there was Spanish lavender in 3 different colors. There was one that was almost maroon. The flowers were almost maroon. Another one that was the purple you see on the screen now. And then a third that was a paler lavender. And I bought probably 5 of them. And that's what you're seeing in this slide, is one of those plants that I bought from Home Depot and planted on my front terrace. They were gorgeous for the first 3 to 4 years. Then they went into decline, and now I'm down to one of the original plants that looks pretty sad, but it did bloom this spring, and one little tiny seedling that really hasn't taken off. So if you've got a place for this, it did bloom spring and fall. If you've got a place for it and you don't mind having to replace it every 3 or 4 years, I love it. I'm gonna go look for some more as soon as the weather cools off, and try to plant some either in the fall or early enough in the spring that it can get established before the sun gets too hot. It has done very well for its short lifetime. It's just I think a short-lived perennial. Okay, Jerry, next slide. Oh, this little Portulaca. I love this. This grows, I have decomposed granite pathways, and I have found this growing in the paths, and I've tried to transplant it a few times. And you're looking at my first success story with the Mexican Primrose growing up around the bottom of the strawberry pot. That little purple flower it's very small. It's smaller than a penny, and but it looks like the Portulaca that you can buy at the nursery, except that it's tiny. I have successfully now transplanted 2 like that, and it is sitting on a limestone wall at the front of my terrace garden, facing west and taking the heat. So these pots both have a drip emitter in them, and I water them probably every 2 or 3 days. So they've gotten bigger than they would ordinarily be growing in the granite pathways. But it's completely native, and when the flowers are finished, you'll see little fuzzy seeds, and the seeds will disperse. The one that I transplanted last year didn't survive the winter, so I think it's probably a short-lived perennial, or maybe even an annual. Okay, Jerry, next slide. Woolly Stomodia. Dee Dee Wright from Guadalupe Native Plant Society brought this to the native plant sale a few years ago, and I planted it as a ground cover in my terrace garden. But it has those pretty little lavender flowers, and I decided I would try it in this little container with a cherub that's left over from an old water garden feature, and I just think it's adorable. The leaves are fuzzy, gray green, pretty small but dense, and it flowers pretty much all summer. The only negative to this plant is that it does freeze back in the winter, but it comes right back from the roots. And if you have an area that you really want to cover with an attractive ground cover, this is your plant. This and the other really good ground cover, the silver ponyfoot. I don't have a picture of that in this presentation because it doesn't flower, but those are very, very good, reliable ground covers. And I think that's all. if you want to, if we can go ahead and go to questions.
So if you have a question for Liz or would like to make a comment, you can go ahead and unmute your phone by clicking on the microphone icon.
Liz, this is Kay. I
Hi,
just wanted
Kay.
to, yeah, hi. I miss seeing everybody so much. I just want to tell you how much I enjoyed this since I have a lot of sun and particularly in my front yard. Well, actually in both the front and backyard. So there, I got several really good ideas.
Good, good. Thank you very much.
Hi, Liz. This is Pam.
Hey, Pam, we missed
How
you
are
this
you?
morning.
I know I missed you too, but I was at an appointment. We'll see you next Wednesday or the Wednesday after that.
right.
I really got some good ideas, and several of them were really interesting. Of course, we like the rock rose, but that Spanish lavender, that looked really interesting today.
That's a beautiful plant. It really
Yeah,
is.
I've never had one of those in my yard.
Yeah.
Of course, I have lots of Esperanza. Some are yellow, and I've got some orange and some red.
Good, good.
Especially from a native nursery. Pride of Barbados is doing good. I trim it back every year, and then it gets big the next year.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tell me more about this globe amaranth.
It's an annual that you grow from seed, and I used to see it a lot at local nurseries. Actually, I think I probably saw it at Walmart more than any place else. There were several. The first selections that I grew from seed were fairly tall, like knee high, maybe a little taller, and the last couple of times I've seen it at the nurseries, it was usually in 6-packs, and it was a more dwarf form. Probably didn't get more than a foot tall. But that I really liked strawberry fields when I grew it. I grew it in Townwood, and it does reseed. That's another nice thing about it.
It's edible too, isn't it?
I'm not sure. Most amaranth is, but I really don't know about it. I haven't checked my herb book though. That's a good idea, Jerry.
I'll look at the herb book
Yeah.
up here. April, I know. April is with you also
Yes, I saw
on this
her.
talk. She may be a good one to ask the question.
Yeah. Got a question, April?
Let's see if she has her mic on.
No, April says, hi, I've tried growing silver ponyfoot twice with no luck. What soil type does it like?
It doesn't like to be too wet. And I've been propagating it, and the way I get it to root is to put it, drape it over a pot that has decomposed granite in it, actually potting soil, and then a layer of decomposed granite on top, and drape that ponyfoot over the top of that, and then lay a rock on it. A small rock, so it gets root contact and it will root. I've been propagating it so I can bring it to the native plant sale.
Awesome. Is there any more questions for Liz?
No, good job.
Well, thanks. Thanks very much. Thank you all for signing on. This was fun to do.
I think our total attendance so far today, I'll have to look and see who's come and gone, but I think we went to 24 people in attendance.
Nice.
So everybody have a good day, and we should have some information out to you soon. We've got some exciting things we're working on. As I said earlier, we had our board meeting yesterday, and there's some exciting things that I'd like to communicate to everybody. So look for that in the next couple of days. So appreciate it. Thank you for coming.
Jerry,
Yes.
I just really want to thank you. I could not have done this without you. I'm technically challenged.
It was fun, and if anybody else wants to try a lunch and learn or something this way, we can sit down and and hashed it out again. It was
Jerry,
it was fun.
Hey,
Liz,
lunch and
this
learn
is
schedule skipped July, but we'll probably be talking to you about August, September, and October.
Sounds good.
Okay.
Hey, Liz,
We'll see y'all.
All right.
Have a good
Y'all
afternoon.
stay well.
Bye. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. Hmm.
how do I get out of here? How do we get out of this? What did I do wrong? This is crazy. I'm doing something wrong.